2013 from Battlefield. That's the source for this. Now, this is cost per hour to operate these aircraft. The B-1, it's $57,870 per hour. The F-22 is $68,362. The B-2 is $69,708. Air Force One is $161,591. And the B-2, ladies and gentlemen, is $169,313 per hour to operate. Per hour. Unbelievable. Now, I want to point you to this Aviation Week Space Technology article, November 11th, 1991. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just the top portion here. It says, two unusually loud sonic booms heard along the west coast from San Diego to north of Los Angeles may have been produced by high-flying classified aircraft returning to test ranges in Nevada. 25 of the U.S. Geologic Survey's 220 sensor system for pinpointing earthquake epicenters detected the passing shockwaves around 6:30 a.m. on October 31st. This is always on a Thursday morning. So I contacted Caltech, and they actually sent me the seismic data for this, and they don't call this an earthquake. They actually call it an airquake or a sonic. So this is not a sonic boom. This is not an airquake or an earthquake. This is some kind of a sonic event that rattled all these instruments. Here's the actual U.S. Department of Interior, just to show you where I'm getting this information. And these are the actual seismic printouts that took place over the early 1990s of these booms that always happen on a Thursday morning. So here's 10/31/1991, last Thursday of the month, and you can see there's a boom, and then about a minute later, there's another boom, which may actually be a chase aircraft following the original aircraft. Here's another one, 6/27/91, last Thursday of the month, always on a Thursday. There's a boom, a minute later, another boom. Here's one, 11/21/91. It says, bingo, it must have been an American bird. They didn't want to work on Thanksgiving Day. 7:17 a.m., 1:30:92, not the space shuttle, a massive boom. A little over a minute later, another boom, following right behind it. Catalina Island, 6:58 a.m., Thursday, April 16th, 1992, another boom. Here's the actual track going over Catalina Island, going over the LA Basin, waking everybody up in the morning on a Thursday, going over Edwards Air Force Base, and then heading to Area 51, Nevada. That's the track of where this aircraft is being tracked. Now, why a Thursday? Why are they doing this on a Thursday? Because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Wednesday, those are reserved for pre-flight. Thursday is the actual test flight. Friday is debrief, and Saturday, Sunday, there's nobody there. So that's why Thursday in the 80s and 90s was the reserve day for test flights. Los Angeles Times, April 17th, 1992. Secret is out on quakes. It's a spy plane. The rumble and bounce have occurred 5 times since last June, always about 7 a.m. on Thursdays. There were no earthquakes, but an aircraft, California Institute of Technology seismologists say. All I can say is that it's something that's traveling through the atmosphere at several times the speed of sound in generally a northeasterly direction. Now, keep in mind, the shuttle was not flying on that day. The SR-71 was not flying on that day. So there was something else going on at that time. Here's one, Seattle Times, April 17th, 1992. Thursday morning shaker upper may be secret spy plane. It happened again Thursday morning. There was a brief rumble, like somebody moving bulky furniture around, and the ground lurched. San Gabriel residents said, then just as they were about to head for their doors, it was gone. So this is again on a Thursday. San Francisco Chronicle, April 18th, 1992. Weird jolts, no quakes in San Gabriel Valley. Analysts from Jane's Defense Weekly, widely respected military periodicals, say that the Thursday morning phenomenon could be a top secret new spy plane dubbed the Aurora that can fly up to 6 times the speed of sound or about 4,000 miles per hour. A very incredible, very fast speed for that time frame at that time. Now, I want to take you on a typical mission profile for this, and this may actually be, according to Jim Goodall, used as a nuclear proliferation monitoring aircraft during the Cold War. So what would take place is this two-stage orbit space plane would take off from Area 51. They would fly a magnetic 340 heading, go over Alaska. Then they would pour the coals over it, over northern Russia. They make a left-hand turn, starting down toward the Middle East. They'd pour the coals to it there again, going about Mach 8 to Mach 12. Then they make another left-hand turn. Now they're under the southern tip of India, going over South China, and then continuing around the northern tip of Australia, going all the way there, and then ending up near Hawaii, making a banking left-hand turn, landing back at Area 51. This could all be done in under 2 hours. Very fast. Now, this is March 6, 2006. Bill Scott, who used to be the Rocky Mountain editor of Aviation Week, he has to get the credit for this particular article because he's the one who spent over a decade tracking down stories of this two-stage to orbit space plane, which he believes to be called the Black Star system. And it consists of a mothership called the SR3 and a smaller parasitic aircraft called the XOV, or Experimental Orbiter Vehicle, that is airdropped from the belly of the mothership at about Mach 1.2 at 25 to 30,000 feet. Here's a good illustration of what this looked like. The mothership actually shows basically the original XB-70 and then what looks like a parasitic aircraft coming on the bottom of the craft. That's what this actually looks like here. And you can see the patent. This is February 7th, 1989 was the patent for this particular design. That's 4,802,639 was this particular patent. And you can see Boeing's version has a trans-atmospheric vehicle showing an aircraft being airdropped from the body of the mothership. This is exactly what the Black Star program looks like. This I got from John Andrews, and this basically states that there was such a program and they may have suffered some type of an emergency right around February 22nd, 1994. Here it says, Dear Pete, the place, Kadena Air Force Base, the time, the weekend of 12-13 February 1994. Initiation action, emergency call from manned aircraft to expedite recovery at Kadena Air Force Base, coming from north, track speed at Mach 4.2, diversions for other aircraft in area. Aircraft recovered and quickly placed in secure hangar Red 3 lockdown, declared at base. Other pilots landing kept and slept in ready quarters. One white-gray C-5C launched from Holloman Air Force Base rapidly. 3 days of lockdown at base. So a couple of points to remember here. This craft was tracked going Mach 4.2. That's way faster than the SR-71. And that there was a specially configured or modified C-5C that was flown there to Kadena Air Force Base, picked it up and flew it back to Holloman Air Force Base. This is what we believe to be a very accurate 3-view drawing of the Black Star XOV, or Speedy. And there were approximately 3 of these aircraft built. It comes in 2 versions. There's a 65 to 65 90-foot version, which is a single-seat version. They have a 2-seat version as well. It's airdropped, as I mentioned, from the belly of the mothership. The back of the aircraft has 2 banks of 4 linear aerospike engines using a modified liquid boron fuel that is shocked into a liquid state by a solid rocket booster. It has a very interesting, basically a tricycle landing gear with a nose gear and what look like outrigger wheels just outside the, basically the wing root fuselage joint on the bottom surface. It has air brakes on the upper and lower surface of the aircraft. The entire bottom section of the aircraft is composed of space shuttle tiles taken directly off the space shuttle. These heat-resistant thermal tiles. It had a stubby vertical stabilizer on the top aft section, which appeared to be damaged. And the F-15 pilot who saw it at Holloman Air Force Base said that the bottom section had a number of panels that were missing when he was seen. It also has these 4 grooves running along the bottom surface of the aircraft, and then these red heat-resistant sections on the leading edge of the wing of the aircraft. It has a Q bay on the upper section for the release of what are called depleted uranium rods from God, which is a non-explosive kinetic energy weapon. There's no warheads on this thing. It could also be used for the release of a reconnaissance satellite and for a very high accurate and resolution synthetic vision system, or a synthetic aperture radar system for the XOV. So that's, in a nutshell, the Speedy aircraft. Now we'll move on to the Mothership SR3. Perhaps 2 of these were built for the entire Black Star program. Lockheed was involved, Rockwell was involved, McDonnell Douglas was involved, and Boeing was involved in Seattle for final assembly. The overall length of the Paris Mothership here is approximately 200 feet in length. It has a 120-foot wingspan. It uses 6 Pratt & Whitney J93 engines. And you can see here on this top view drawing, it has canards that retract backwards or forwards for low flight. And the bottom of the Mothership matches the top configuration of the top of the parasitic aircraft. So there's this relief section on the bottom of this Mothership where these smaller aircraft can fit up inside, and it's airdrop when they get to the drop zone. This is an illustration that was done by Tom Bogan showing you what it looked like at Holloman Air Force Base when they unloaded this craft. You can see the stubby tail with the tarp on top, and then the large feature here is this modified C5C with the chipmunk cheek extensions on either side. This is a heavily modified C5, and then you can see these veins or grids within the 4 linear aerospike engines, which are divided in 2 banks of 2 on the bottom section of the Speedy here. Now, I want to talk about some legacy of the technology of the Tier 3 craft here. Aircraft industry firms now participating or actively involved in gravity include the Glenn L. Martin Company of Baltimore, Convair of San Diego, Bell Aircraft of Baltimore, New York, Sikorsky Division of United Aircraft, Lear Incorporated of Santa Monica, Clark Electronics of Palm Springs, and Sperry Gyroscope of Great Neck, Long Island. So this is November 26, 1955, Amarillo Daily News. So already by the mid-1950s, they already had companies working to break the gravity barrier. We'll do one here. Spaceship marvel seen if science can outwit gravity. This is from Amarillo Daily News, November 29, 1955. Many in America's aircraft and electronic industries are excited over the possibility of using its magnetic and gravitational fields as a medium of support for amazing flying vehicles, which will not depend on the air for lift. Spaceships capable of accelerating in a few seconds to speeds many thousands of miles an hour and making sudden changes of course at these speeds without subjecting their passengers to the so-called G-forces caused by gravity's pull are also envisioned. So, what are we seeing here in this article? The reference works are clearly telling us that by the mid-1950s, they had aerospace defense contractors, universities working on cracking the gravity barrier, building craft that could eventually make these 90-degree right angle turns, that could stop on a dime, that could reverse. This is exactly the kind of aircraft flight maneuvers that we're seeing that match the form, fit, and function of UFOs and USOs, unidentified submerged objects. Now, we'll move on to Ryan Aerospace 1962, electricity for space exploration. Look at what they're doing here. Look at what the aircraft they were working on within their document. Within the next 10 years, according to their document, electric propulsion will play a leading role in making extensive space trips possible. They've already done it. Breakthroughs already been made. Cash Landrum incident, December 29th, 1980, involving Vicki Landrum. Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and Colby Landrum, who basically on December 29th, 1980, near Huffman, Texas, saw a large 90-foot tall twin ice cream cone looking craft basically hover about 50 feet in front of their vehicle. Betty Cash actually got out of her vehicle, went to the forward section of her vehicle near her hood, and stood there looking at this for about a minute to 2 minutes as 23, repeat, 23 double rotors Chinook CH-47 helicopters were chasing this craft that had this flame section coming on the bottom of it. When she got back into the vehicle, it was hot, but keeping in mind this is in winter time. And all 3 eyewitnesses suffered from the effects of radiation poisoning. This is back in December 29th, 1980. Now, what did they actually see? What was actually going on here? I submit that this is part of the NEPA program, the Nuclear Energy for Propulsion of Aircraft. And in this particular document, they indicate that for fiscal year 1960, by that time, by 1960, from 46 to 1960, the Atomic Energy Commission, the US Navy, and the US Air Force had already spent almost $1 billion of procurement funding on nuclear-powered aircraft, atomic-powered spacecraft. And you can see in this drawing here, the cost breakdown and an atomic power reactor with a subcritical reactor. So they've already done it. They've absolutely already done it. Now, I want to highlight another technology here. Between 1983 and 1989, over 25,000 eyewitnesses reported a boomerang-shaped craft the size of an entire football field. It had tubes, pipes, and cylinders on the bottom of the craft. It had a crossbeam and girder construction that appeared to be inside what appeared to be translucent or transparent panels. And these multicolored lights were flashing in sequence. The reds would go off, the blues would go off, the greens would go off, the yellows would go off, all in sequence, not haphazardly. This is a drawing illustration that was done by John McNeil, who did a fantastic job on this. This is March 24th, 1983, over the Taconic State Parkway, about 30 minutes north of downtown New York City, where hundreds of people pulled off to the side of the road and saw this massive boomerang V-shaped craft hovering silently over the Taconic State Parkway. It was shining down this light onto the vehicles below, and it had these transparent panels showing people who were directly below this craft. They could look up inside, and it looked like what appeared to be crossbeam and girder construction, like a truss bridge. This thing was nearly silent. Some eyewitnesses reporting a low-frequency electrical humming noise like a transformer. Here's the Hudson Valley Boomerang breakdown, shows you the different configurations that we're seeing. Again, practically all eyewitnesses reported this: tubes, pipes, and cylinders on the bottom of this vehicle. A couple of characteristics here. Sightings of the craft came in from Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts. The craft was virtually silent and measured between 300 and 900 feet across. The UFO was seen hovering over expressways, lakes, and rivers. Object was reported by airline pilots, air traffic controllers, doctors, lawyers, local law enforcement, firemen, computer programmers. The craft appeared to have an industrial steel structural girder and crossbeam internal construction. Here's the Taconic State Parkway where this was actually seen. Putnam County, Dutchess County, Yorktown, Millwood, Danbury. This is where the heart of what the Hudson Valley Boomerang sightings took place. Now, I put this drawing together showing you the flight path on the March 23rd, 1983 sighting. Starting at Millwood, going up toward Yorktown Heights, it was following the Taconic State Parkway, zigzagging its way as it was following the Taconic State Parkway. But here's the interesting point that I really want to point out. That this craft were basically, when they were seen by the eyewitnesses, it wasn't making this banking turn like a B-2, but it was making this flat turn like it was on a pinwheel or on a turntable. It wasn't making a banking turn, but this flat turn. Aircraft can't do this. We're talking Harrier type technology, but this is no Harrier, absolutely not. So I put together a design and you can get blueprints if you want. You can request that to me, where you can build your own Hudson Valley Boomerang. This is what the finished product actually looks like. What was that brightly colored sky report on Thursdays? Here again, object was seen from White, New York to as far as Yorktown. Object described seeing alternative colors between white and green as the object zigzagged across the sky to the north. Won't go into all these details, but the highlights of the March 24th, 1983 sighting. Now, this is one day after a very significant event took place. So at the intersection of 202 and 135, traffic was halted in a tangled jam as motorists stopped, got out of their cars, and looked up at the object. As I mentioned, this was one day after a very significant event, and that was the March 23rd public address to the nation for the SDI, or Star Wars Strategic Defense Initiative, that was pitched by Ronald Reagan. So here we have Ronald Reagan, March 23rd, 1983, pitching Star Wars. Less than 24 hours later, we have these massive sightings of this huge boomerang-shaped craft over the Hudson Valley area. Are the two events connected? Could the SDI program be connected to the Hudson Valley Boomerang sightings? Could there be a connection? So there's two essential thoughts and schools of thought on the Hudson Valley sightings. Number one, the object was a genuine UFO, extraterrestrial, could be a possibility. Number two, the sighting could be explained by a group of stunt pilots based out of Stormville Airport, also known as the Stormville Flyers. That includes subheading A, ultralights, B, small single-engine planes, Cessna 152, 172. So I asked the question, is there a third option? Some, but not all, sightings in Danbury, Connecticut were attributed to small single-engine Cessna 152 aircraft flying in formation. However, those who saw both the planes and the genuine Hudson Valley Boomerang could immediately tell the difference. That's the thing. People who saw the planes and the actual Boomerang said there was no comparison, completely two different events. This is a report from Danbury, Connecticut, Night Siege, page 47. I saw 5 planes flying together in formation around this field. They were trying to pull a hoax. I stopped at the rest area, got out of my car, and sat at a picnic bench to watch them. They would all turn their lights on at once from red to white. Those were the only lights they had. They were flying all around this valley. The first object I saw was definitely a plane. So even this person knew that they were trying to pull a hoax. This did not look like what the actual craft here saw. Loose groupings of planes became tight formations with as little as 6 inches between wingtips. Discover Magazine, November 1984. So in this article, they tried to completely discredit what actual eyewitnesses were seeing, and they tried to blame the whole thing on these formation flights. So what I did is I put together some illustrations depicting and showing people what it would have looked like to try to fake this Hudson Valley Boomerang. And you can see here that in a straight and level flight, you could somewhat maintain position, although I wouldn't want to do this at night. Now, making a left-hand turn is where it gets interesting, because pilots on the right, planes on the right, have to speed up. You know, it's a simple matter of mathematics and physics. To maintain formation, aircraft on the right have to speed up, but aircraft on the left have to slow down. But then it gets really interesting, because if you make a flat turn, the aircraft on the right have to go up and to the left. The aircraft on the left have to go back and to the right. So there's just no way that planes flying in formation can actually duplicate what was seen in this illustration, the actual Hudson Valley Boomerang. The lighting configuration stayed solid, like they were embedded into concrete. That's something that airplanes flying in formation just can't do. Now I want to point out this fact here by Abraham Lincoln. You may fool all of the people some of the time. You can even fool some of the people all of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time. So I want to state right up front that we just can't be fooled anymore. We're no longer going to take these lame excuses by the government that these are just planes flying in formation. We absolutely have a secret space program. The program is paid for by the American taxpayer. It is being run by the military-industrial complex, including Lockheed Martin, Boeing Phantom Works, Northrop Grumman, McDonnell Douglas, and also various defense contractors like General Dynamics within the Reagan administration. And it's my goal in this presentation to expose the technology, hope it trickles down to the American airline industry for the benefit of all mankind. And I definitely want to thank you for your attention.